July of 2023, the legion of Hollywood writers and pretenders joined forces to go on strike as an effort to stand up to the big studios, taking a stand from topics as far as artificial intelligence all the way to streaming. This massive work stoppage in Hollywood coming just 3 years after Hollywood's last big work stoppage caused by a global pandemic in which Hollywood still had yet to recover from by that point in time. The strike being the first major Hollywood strike since 2008. And oh boy, what a decision it was. While all the big name actors or well-known writers can walk around on their picket lines once as a virtue signal for their Instagram post, many smaller actors and writers with much less money and fortune were left completely without work. And perhaps even worse, it set up a time where the already struggling industry of owning a movie theater chain was going to be facing a year or a stretch of time where no movies were being made, meaning there would be a limited release schedule at some point. Now, financial experts in Hollywood assumed that the big impact would come in 2024. And so the big mantra, survive until 2025, was born. How well did it work to survive until 2025? Well, 2025 is one of the worst box office years in recent history, as well as for creative storytelling ever. Due to that, Survive Until 25 became Survive 25 very quickly. The creative bankruptcy in Hollywood runs deep. 2025 being a year in which we saw sequels, prequels, sequels to movies that were prequels, remakes of classic films into live action, CGI remakes of classic films, reboots, and glorified advertisements. While people originally thought 2024 would be bad for Hollywood, 2025 proved things could get much worse. The box office in 2025 had one of the worst years in recent history, with only 4 films releasing that crossed the $1 billion mark. The number 1 film of the year was a sequel to a Chinese film titled Na Zha 2. The movie was so popular in China crossed the $2 billion mark, and while those numbers might be a little fudged, it still was massively popular over in Asia. So big, in fact, only 1% of its total $2 billion box office actually came from the United States. And of the $1 billion box office movies from a Western studio, 2 are sequels, and 1 is a remake, none of which I personally went to see. A down box office year was the worst case scenario for theaters in 2025. With streaming and at-home theaters being the new norm, movie theaters were already fighting for their existence. But there were massive stretches throughout this entire year where it felt like pretty much nothing of note was released. This summer was supposed to be the time that saved the box office, seeing the release of 2 massive superhero films, Dinosaur 50, and a racing movie. Yet, when it was all said and done, only 1 of those movies was even remotely successful. The other 3, all while garnering up to $600 million, were still flops for the studios and had no holding power that convinced people to come to the cinema. So, looking back on the year of slop that was 2025, I did my best to try and narrow down my 5 favorite and 5 worst projects of the year, both streaming and movies. And you know what? Let's start on a positive note and go over the few good things I actually saw in 2025. Number 5, Terminalist Dark Wolf. In a year where movies were a mess, it will come as no surprise that most of my top 5 from this year comes from shows on streaming services. In 2022, Amazon released the series The Terminalist, starring Chris Pratt, one of the best series in recent years in my opinion. However, it is for some reason impossible for studios to get out an 8-episode series every year, even though we used to get like 22-episode seasons every year. So as a way of holding fans over and maybe apologizing for how long it took, they released a prequel series following Taylor Kitsch's character Ben Edwards. Terminalist Dark Wolf was a great action spy show with great character writing and decently compelling stories. While Dark Wolf, in my opinion, was nowhere near as good as the first season of Terminalist, I definitely thought the series got a little bit worse as it went on, but at the end of the day, it was still a great action show. And when I say worse, I just mean that the first episode was absolutely incredible. The second episode was not as incredible, but still pretty good. Third episode was not as good as that one, but still pretty good, and so on. I didn't dislike the ending, but I enjoyed the show thoroughly. And like I said, it was a great action show that showed us how Ben Edwards made his way into the CIA, and personally has left me anxiously waiting for Terminalist Season 2. Number 4, Warfare. A24's Warfare is one of the few movies I saw that I actually enjoyed in 2025. While really there is not much story to be found in the movie, it is a brutal film showing the reality of war. Some of the best sound design I've ever heard in a movie. Watching this in a theater was one of the most tense films I've seen. While A24 is owned by Warner Brothers, the studio's process of putting independently made films on display is great for trying to find next great directors in film, and Warfare was absolutely one of the best movies of the year. Number 3, F1. Although F1 was a glorified advertisement for the sport of Formula 1, it just happens I'm a fan of Formula 1, and the super basic sports movie story is compelling enough with great characters to keep you engaged. Damson Idris and Brad Pitt give incredible performances as they're admittedly pretty basic characters, but they have a great dynamic and it keeps you enthralled in the movie. With a lot of movies being overly obsessed with political messaging and identity, F1 is proof that at the end of the day, a basic and simple story is a rarity in Hollywood, and a well-written, feel-good movie is what most moviegoers want. At the end of the day, the movie did still flop due to the massive budget it took, and even though they had made some money back on advertisements, a $600 million box office is not what this movie needed to break even, but it's still one of my favorite movies of the year. Number 2, Reacher Season 3. Speaking of simple stories, I present to you one of the most simple stories in history, Reacher. The basic story of Reacher is big guy finds himself in a bad scenario. Reacher uses his military police background to solve the mystery and kill the bad guy, and he gets the girl. It's an extremely basic story that under a normal year should just be an entertaining show that doesn't even breach the top 10 in 2025, but it's my second favorite thing of the year. And Reacher Season 3 was coming off of a bit of a weaker Season 2, and this was a real return to form, giving us a good mystery for Reacher to solve on his own. Alan Ritchson is Jack Reacher, has the size and the charisma of the character in the book.
What flavor is this?
Today's special, lavender infusion.
This is why people beat you up on the sidewalk.
And it's awesome that Amazon is able to actually get this show out once a year, which is a rarity in Hollywood. Now, before I give my number 1 project of 2025, let's look at some honorable mentions that came out throughout the year. And by some, I mean one. This year was so poor that when I was trying to think of my top 5 favorite things, I actually only managed to think of 6 things I saw that were even worthy of being considered good this year. So just barely missing out on my list and coming in as an honorable mention is the movie Sinners. Sinners was beautifully shot, really well acted, with Michael B. Jordan playing 2 different characters and an incredible performance. And the soundtrack of this movie is absolutely great. Personally, not being a massive horror fan, as well as Sinners being a pretty generic vampire story, essentially from dusk till dawn, it did not quite crack into my personal top 5, but Ryan Coogler definitely impressed me with the beautiful cinematography in this show, and I'm very curious to see what he does next. Number 1, Mobland.
We shake the right hands, break the wrong ones.
I think we have a situation developing.
Not only was Mobland my favorite project of the year, I'd also argue it was one of the best written movies or shows of 2025. Mobland has an absolutely star-studded cast and an awfully compelling story to go with it. Tom Hardy as Harry D'Souza is a fixer of sorts for the Harrigan crime family. He basically spends the whole show putting out fires, and he's kind of a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. His goal is to try and help the failing criminal empire. Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren, and Patty Constantine also give amazing performances with this absolutely stacked cast with some of the best character writing and work I've seen in years. I thought it'd be pretty hard for Guy Ritchie to top his last show, The Gentleman, and even though Mobland is a very different show than The Gentleman, the political maneuvering, intense action, and amazing characters would lead me to argue that it is in fact even better, and if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. And unfortunately, it'll probably take until 2027 to get a season 2 of Mobland. At least we have The Gentleman in 2026 to hold us over. So, the limited top 5 is now out of the way for 2025, and now it's time to move on to the bottom 5. The bottom 5 of the year was arguably just as difficult for me to get, whereas the top 5 was difficult because I couldn't think of enough things to make a top 5 at first. The bottom 5 was difficult because I thought of so many things that could easily make a bottom 5 list, and I had to narrow it down to just 5. So, the dishonorable mentions category is going to be a lot bigger for this one than it was for the top 5. I mean, genuinely, the amount of slop I saw this year, like even the dishonorable mentions don't even quite fully cover it. With both these lists, I tried to do kind of a mix of like objective quality to a movie, whether it be storytelling, cinematography, whatever, and then my own personal enjoyment. I wouldn't quite say it's 50-50. I think it varies, where I personally kind of decide if one of them is so much higher than the other, it'll outweigh it enough. And you'll see that a lot more with the bottom 5 than you did with the top 5. So, after many struggles, I took the slop that I had this year and I managed to narrow it down to just a bottom 5. Number 5, War of the Worlds. Now, this one does pain me to put on the list because it was actually some of the most fun I had watching a movie this year. Well, it wouldn't be in my personal bottom 5. Like I said, when I made the list, I tried to balance out objective quality with personal enjoyment, and the latter category was mostly weighted in that discussion. But even though I enjoyed War of the Worlds, it had nothing to do with the movie being any good. In fact, it's one of the worst movies ever put to screen. So the first category of objective quality just outweighed so much that it needed to make this top 5, bottom 5 list. The film was made during COVID, I would assume, and they couldn't afford furniture, so they just kind of put Ice Cube in a green screen room and had him discerningly look at the camera. The actual technical quality of this movie is very poor. There are multiple instances of green screen artifacting where Ice Cube's hair and glasses just sort of begin to disappear into the green screen. And the way it's shot and edited is just bad. And at the same time, it's also a glorified commercial where having Amazon Prime saves the day, because it allows Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid to express ship Ice Cube a USB stick that he inserts in one of the most dramatic moments in cinematic history.
We only got one shot at this. Are you sure you can get it here?
Don't worry. I fly like a bird. I can soar like an eagle with this thing.
Okay, Mark. I believe in you.
Will you...
I love you guys.
The acting in the movie also obviously just plain sucks. It's one of the worst movies ever made and really is the epitome of 2025. Number 4, Peacemaker Season 2. Something I watched this year for the first time and ended up enjoying far more than I thought I would was Season 1 of Peacemaker. So, you can imagine my disappointment when Peacemaker Season 2 turned out to be one of the biggest piles of crap that came out in 2025.
That is one big pile of shit.
With stupid dialogue writing as well as utterly nonsensical plot, Season 2 of Peacemaker was remarkably bad. Not helping with this piece of writing cancer was the extremely slow-paced episodes that stretched out across 3 months from August to October, with very little to almost no positives I can take away from the second season. The best I'll say is that the intro song is catchy and John Cena is a decent actor. Everything other than that can be thrown into the fire and burnt to a crisp.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it!
And if you want to hear more about it, I have a full 40+ minute video on my channel breaking down the horrific writing of Peacemaker Season 2. Number 3, Captain America Brave New World. What can be worse than a poorly written sequel movie? How about a poorly written Captain America sequel that doesn't even have Captain America in it? Or, even worse, a Captain America sequel where you don't have to watch the previous 3 Captain America movies, but instead have to watch The Incredible Hulk and Eternals. 2025 was truly a disastrous year for Marvel, and Brave New World set the tone. Anthony Mackie's Sam Wilson was an amazing Falcon with his own complex character in previous movies, but this movie decides instead to relegate him to being a self-righteous clown, and the writers, who clearly wanted to make a point that Sam Wilson was the new Captain America, rarely actually referred to Sam by his name. Instead, every character clumsily refers to him as Captain America. On top of that, they come in and have Bucky actively talk down on Steve Rogers' character.
Steve gave people something to believe in, but you give him something to aspire to.
The serum was not ready. And then, but more important, the serum amplifies everything that is inside. So, good becomes great. Bad becomes worse. This is why you were chosen. Because a strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power. But a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
And Falcon doesn't even need to use the shield because he has a Wakandan Iron Man suit for some reason. Yes, Captain America is given a vibranium suit by the isolationist African country of Wakanda. I'd love for the Marvel writers to come out and give an actual reason for why it makes sense that Wakanda would give Sam this suit, considering the most they've done for anyone else was was give Steve Rogers some crappy shields in Infinity War and give Bucky an arm that doesn't even do anything cool. Well, I guess except for what they gave Riri Williams, but more on her later. On top of that, the movie is a cobbled together mess with a ballooned budget, despite what Marvel reported, because they essentially shot the whole movie twice and tried to edit something watchable out of it, miserably failing in the process. Brave New World was one of the worst movies I watched this year, but Disney, they're not out of the crosshairs yet. Number 2, Ironheart.
What I'm building is
Important?
iconic.
By far the worst made show of the year, but not my number 1 was Ironheart. This show was so old and Marvel did not want to release it, but ultimately decided it was better just quickly and discreetly release the entire 6-episode show across 2 weekends. One of the most faithfully adapted shows Marvel has ever made, and that was a massive mistake because the comics for Ironheart are just as stupid as the show was. Ironheart is not the origin of a superhero, it's the origin of a stupid villain, and I say stupid because the idiotic character of Riri Williams decides she should sacrifice her chance to sell her inventions to make billions to instead team up with a bunch of other idiots to steal thousands. The character, who is so evil she reincarnates her dead best friend into AI form, and when her dead best friend's brother sees this and gets mad at her, Riri then has the audacity to act like he's the one out of line. And in case the whole villain origin was not clear enough, the series culminates with Riri deciding it's a great idea to make a deal with the literal devil, and her deal with the devil was to ask for the AI back, but she's instead given the alive best friend. Yes, she made a deal with the devil to ask for her AI back, not the real person, because she asks the person, the thing that spawns in front of her, to run diagnostics, meaning she asked for the AI back and was instead given the real person when she asked for the AI. But hey, when you have writing gems such as this, of course the show is going to be amazing.
Go, here we go, okay. Just to let you know, your girl finna be bigger than Jobs.
Right.
Bigger than Gates.
Right.
Bigger than Pym.
Right.
Bigger than Stark.
Yeah.
Combined.
That is one big pile of shit.
And sure, you can run down to the comments and call me racist all you want, but at the end of the day, I'm not the person who literally wrote a scene where 3 minorities have a fight in a fast food restaurant.
That is one big pile of shit.
Now, while I'd say Ironheart is the worst thing made all year, it's not at my number 1, because my personal disdain for our number 1 item is what elevated it to that spot. But first, we have quite a few dishonorable mentions to get to. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. A stupid and disappointing end to a great action franchise. The terrible AI plot for this movie took away from what is incredible stunts and camera work from America's last real movie star, Superman. A movie that gets worse the more you think about what's actually happening, where Lex Luthor, who tells us he hates metahumans, decides the best way to rid the world of Superman is by creating 2 more metahumans, where some great casting and performances are outweighed by terrible writing and some of the most nauseating cinematography ever. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and the Minecraft movie. 2 movies that were pure 2025 slop. And as a fan of both Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's, the writing and characters in these movies are so utterly trash that the product that came out is an embarrassment. And yes, I'm aware both these movies performed respectably well at the box office for what they were. Minecraft almost reaching $1 billion. Guess what? I don't care. The movies sucked. Number 1, Daredevil Born Again. Similarly to how War of the Worlds was just so bad I had to put it on my list despite my personal enjoyment while watching it, Daredevil Born Again is probably not in the 5 worst things made this year, but I personally despise this show so much that I had to put it in my number 1 spot. Marvel has spent the last 6 years executing every successful IP they have at gunpoint, but one had so far managed to slip between the cracks. Outside of some really stupid Kingpin character assassination, it felt like Marvel had a chance to finally make something good by making a alleged 4th season to one of their best things ever made, being the original Netflix Daredevil. Netflix's Daredevil was a show that was so good, Daredevil actually became one of my all-time favorite superheroes. The character writing and just style of the show is absolutely breathtaking, and it's a shame it was canceled so unceremoniously. But my expectations were very high when they revealed Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock was coming back. And even better, they were going to be adapting one of the few good storylines to come out of modern Marvel comics. which was, of course, Charles Soule's Daredevil run, which features one of the few interesting villains created in the 21st century, being Muse. And Marvel went out and decided to assassinate 7 different characters, both figuratively and literally. Daredevil went from an intelligent lawyer who was heavily concerned with secret identity as well as a lot of other things, and decided to completely out White Tiger's secret identity in one of the stupidest court maneuvers ever that would get Matt Murdock himself disbarred in real life, as well as get bossed around by Angela Alla as he takes a back seat in many aspects.
Is it the Poindexter thing? Should I not have told you about that? You're late to meetings, you're insulting our client. Jesus, Matt, I barely recognize you. What is going on?
He acts completely different to the character that was shown in the Netflix show that came before. Despite having so little screen time, they decided to make Foggy into an untrustworthy idiot before shooting him in the chest. Karen, whose entire character arc was culminated with Matt's mother telling her that when Matt tries to push you away, that's when you need to bring him closer, decided to instead ditch him and move across the country right after the death of their best friend.
You tell me, Karen, what do you expect me to do here? What do I need to do to have a conversation with you? I've tried calling, I've left messages.
No, I know, you're right.
So what do you want?
I just was busy.
Oh, don't give me busy. I can't.
My friend died too, Matt. And then I lost you. You didn't talk to me for weeks. I was halfway in and then halfway out.
Take some minutes.
Okay. Okay. No, I don't want to do this. I came for Foggy and I...
People have bailed on Matt his whole life. And I'm not gonna be one of them. You do what you want, but it's not the kind of friend I want to be.
Kingpin was turned into a cuck who walked around like a bumbling idiot even though he's one of the most cunning villains Marvel ever had. Vanessa, who was so obsessed with Kingpin and fascinated by his power, so much so that she was separated from him for years and stayed loyal to him, decided to cheat on Fisk and turned into the real kingpin of the crime family, in one of the dumbest girl boss twists Marvel has ever had.
Keep smart, keep low. You did none of that. Now you owe.
The rules were worth it when you were running things. It was better then. You know that.
That is one big pile of shit.
They made Bullseye a crying baby who was scared to go to Gin Pop in prison, even though Bullseye would murder the crap out of anyone he came across in Gin Pop. He literally murdered like 60 people in Daredevil Season 3.
I'm not supposed to be here.
Right. Hear that all the time. Stop at the line.
What is this?
Welcome to your new digs.
No, I was told I'm supposed to...
Welcome to Gen Pop, Agent Poindexter.
And Punisher stupidly walked into a building full of cops who were there to kill him, who decided not to kill him because they're fans of him, which Frank Castle from Netflix never would have done. On top of that, the stupid writing, not putting Daredevil in a suit for 6 episodes, giving us Kamala Khan dad cameos in stupid bottle episodes, and giving us new horrible, annoying, boring characters such as Kirsten, Cherry, Heather, and Buck. And one of the biggest sins was instead of making Muse a badass serial killer villain who directly countered Daredevil due to Matt not being able to detect him with his radar sense, they made him a lame incel who dies like an idiot. And let's not forget the incredible writing of Fiddle Faddle Guy.
I missed my SSI appointment and they cut my benefits. Bad enough trying to live off food stamps, but when they cut it, man, it takes forever to get that shit back regular. Then you gotta start eating throwaway crap from supermarket dumpsters. Begging for change, for food. Just once, I want a dessert.
And the terrible ending to go along with it. And thus, that brings us to the end of my review of the Year of SLOP 2025. So many mediocre movies didn't make my list because I'd seen so much worse this year. Or I just ultimately decided to skip those movies that came out. So let's mix in some special shout outs to some things that I didn't watch this year. Snow White, the easiest predicted disaster ever, turned out to be, in fact, a disaster.
Weird.
Stranger Things, a show I quit watching after season 3, but is the last true cultural phenomenon, and from what I've heard and seen, they managed to finish it in a way so bad, the show's fans convinced themselves there was a secret episode that explained why the finale sucked so much. Also, congratulations to Stranger Things by dethroning what I thought was never gonna be touched as cringiest scene of the year, thanks to one Bella Ramsey.
I'm gonna be a dad.
With an overwritten and freakishly long coming out scene where the character that everyone knew was gay turned out to in fact be gay. And of course, a special shout out to Marvel and DC, who put out such slop that the superhero genre is likely gone, and we are now set for a future of Batman and Spider-Man movies as the nerds fade back to irrelevancy, which I'd argue is probably a good thing at this point. And the ultimate cherry on top of the year was when one of Hollywood's legacy studios and Warner Brothers, which is one of the stupidest companies of all time, fully capitulated as being sold to a streaming service, sending the industry into a panic. That's right, the strike 3 years ago, in order to combat streaming services and artificial intelligence, set them up for a year that was so sloppy and bad that now streaming services are taking over legacy studios, and the writing's so bad it may as well have been artificial intelligence. But hey, you know what? SAG-AFTRA, they've figured out the best way to stand up to this deal and try to keep it from going down. And that's by going on strike, shutting down their industry again. Because as you can tell, that worked out so well last time.
Not a great plan.
But hey, now that 2025 is over, surely 2026 will be better. And what I can say is, at least there's a full release schedule, as well as some movies and shows that I'm actually looking forward to. But the creative bankruptcy still runs deep in Hollywood. Because if you look at the entire lineup for 2026, it mainly consists of movies and shows that are sequels, prequels, sequels to movies that were prequels, remakes of classic films into live action, CGI remakes of classic films, reboots, and glorified advertisements. So instead of survive until 2025, I can say that if nothing clicks in 2026, then movie theaters will see you in heaven in 2027. Thanks for watching.